Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to have you all dial in to listen to us talk about TUC and the international experience. Also incredibly grateful for the three current second year students that are joining us to share their experiences with you. Before we dive in, we'll just do quick introductions just for you to have more background on who we are and why we're actually here today. So I'll start. My name is Valeria Wiens. I'm Associate Director of Admissions here at TUC. I've been at TUC for about 5 years. I started in the Career Services Office and switched to admissions last year. But prior to that, as you might have guessed by my accent, I did not live in the United States. I actually grew up in Russia and Germany, and then lived in Spain and Canada before actually moving to the Upper Valley. So excited to welcome you all today, and I'll kick it off with our students for introductions.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the chat. I'm Rob, originally from Germany, did all my undergrad schooling there, and then moved over to the US. Worked there in investment management for 3 years in New York. Then moved back to Germany to start a nonprofit, and then came all the way to New Hampshire to attend TUC and get my MBA. During last summer, I interned at Bain, and I'm going full time back to Bain Boston.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm originally from Brazil. I'm happy to be talking to you. So previous to TUC, I was working in Brazil for Coca-Cola. So I worked there for 7 years in different roles in marketing, innovation, and a little bit of strategy. Came to TUC, and then I did my summer at BCG back in Brazil. And after TUC, I'll be returning to BCG.
Hey everyone, welcome to the chat. I'm Deepak Shankaran. I'm from India. I did my chemical engineering back in India, worked at ExxonMobil for 6 years before business school. Moved here, wanted to transition to consulting. So I was at McKinsey in Houston this last summer. At school, I'm involved with some admissions work. I'm also with the Reverse Center for Energy, and I'm also with the Public Speaking Club. So happy to answer any questions that you may have on any of those topics.
Nice, and clearly very, very different backgrounds, different countries, different industries and functions. So I'm just curious, what brought you to TUC?
Yeah, I can kick that off. So when I was looking for an MBA program, I did a lot of first searching, kind of soul searching about myself. What do I think will fit me best and fit my personality best? So I visited a bunch of schools, and when I came to Hanover, I felt that like the environment that we have here, small town, somewhere, I always call it in the middle of nowhere, that fit my personality best, and it reminded me of a town I spent 2 years of my high school in, and the friends that I found there, I felt are kind of the most long-lasting friendships that I have in my life, because an environment like this allows us to just interact with each other on a different level that could never happen in a large city. And that's, why I mainly chose TUC. So basically for me, the most important part was a community that builds friendship rather than just being classmates. Those were the reasons why I chose TUC, or the main reasons.
Yeah, so for me, I feel like similar reasons to Rob. And I feel like with every Tucky that you talk to, I think community is going to be the first word that pops to their head. And that's why one of the main reasons why I chose TUC was definitely because of the community. But also I was reflecting on things that I would feel was the right choice for me in terms of academics, and also that would provide me with extra skills and resources that I would find in order to transition my career. So I've never worked in consulting before, and was really interested in that when I was already prospecting schools for MBAs. So coming to TUC and thinking about if TUC was a right fit for me, I felt that a lot of people in TUC had a lot of resources and prepare for me to transition my career into consulting. So that was something that caught my attention. And also the general management program. So I had a business degree in undergrad, but had never worked with finance or anything that was more quant. So I felt that I needed to brush up on that skills, and TUC has a really rigorous program on that. So, those other two things were important. But when I came to visit, I felt that the community was really a special thing, and I'd never lived in the US before. So I knew that that was going to be a very important thing for me in order to feel embraced and to find a home away from Brazil, which I'm glad that I found here in Hanover, New Hampshire.
Uh, Pretty similar reasons to Rob and Julia, I guess. I'd lived all my years before business school back in India. So when I looked at business school, I guess I looked for a couple of things. One, I went to a small college town for undergrad, and I really wanted to relive that experience. I guess a second big factor for me was I wanted to go to a smaller school. I've realized over time that I'm someone who does better in a smaller setting where I'm kind of a part of the school and not just a statistic in a very large school. And the third big factor for me was I was an engineer in college, so I've never done a single business course my entire life. So I needed a strong, rigorous a prescriptive core curriculum which would really set me up for any direction that I choose to take on after that. And like they said, underpinning all of this was a community. Every student alumni I spoke to during the admissions process just spoke of Tuck in this special way that I found really appealing, and I'm glad I chose Tuck.
And actually, Deepak, you mentioned the curriculum, so I want to jump in on that. Can you tell me more? Actually, we'd love to hear from all of you. What has been your favorite curricular experience so far at Tuck? Not to put you on the spot, so.
No, that's fascinating. I think after the first year ended, when I was doing my internship this summer, that's when I got a chance to take a step back and understand how much we had covered in the first year, a range of quant courses to a range of soft skills to just working in groups. So it's a pretty big range. For me, my standout course has been our macroeconomics course, Global Economics for Managers. I think that's really pushed me to think critically and think clearly of a problem. These are topics that all of us tend to talk of very casually, like GDP or interest rates, but truly understanding what it meant was hard and was effortful, and I'm glad I could put in that effort and could really learn that subject in a good manner. So,
Nice.
Yeah, I can add to that. I mean, besides completely agreeing with Deepak, actually there was one moment during my internship where I took a class last term. It was an elective in design thinking, and it was something that I had never come in contact with, and I didn't really expect. I mean, I really liked the topic. I really liked the class. I just didn't expect going into my summer at Bain that would be of a huge help for me. But you couldn't believe it. But my first case was on design thinking and redesigning a customer journey at a large insurance company in Germany. And yeah, I mean, that course really helped me. And then besides that, I'm taking currently an elective with Ken French from the Pharma French model. And it's a research to practice seminar on empirical evidence in finance, where we're in class with 10 other people. So it's very small and it's very intimate with a really industry expert, really hands-on. And the relationship that you get with the professor is, I think you'll have that at any class, but things including, going to dinner to his house with his wife on a Friday night, going to his lake house next summer, and I mean, I think you'll only find that at Tuck.
Yeah, so I'll just add, so I also did a very interesting elective last spring, which is CEO experience. It's taught by the former governor of New Hampshire, Governor John Lynch. And in that class, you experience real day-to-day CEO decisions. And I never felt like so empowered, and also like had to think so critically about like company cases and company challenges in order to make a situation that would impact my whole company. So it really pushes you to think as a thoughtful leader. And I feel like not only in my summer, I was thinking about like what the CEO of the company that I was like providing consulting services for would think about the project, but also I feel like towards our lives, regardless of the industry that you choose, you'll probably be in a leadership position. So I feel like that class gave me a lot of skills and capabilities to reflect on the type of leader, possibly CEO or just a very senior manager, like what kind of leader I want to be. So I think that was a very one of the most memorable academic experiences from my first year.
What about experiential learning? So Taco, where did you go your first year? Did you do a first year project? I assume you did because it's a requirement. But can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So I did. So my TUC Go requirement I fulfilled with a GX or Global Insight Expedition, and I really wanted to choose a culture and a country that I had no prior exposure to, and felt that if I wouldn't do it now, I probably will not get a whole lot of exposure to. So I went with 25 other classmates to Georgia and Armenia, and I think it really changed my kind of perspective on, how to view smaller, more emerging countries. I learned a ton about the tech culture that they have there. There are actually a lot of American Armenians who go back from the Silicon Valley and start tech companies up there. And so they have a lot of successful companies there. They have an incredibly talented programmers and coders there. And so that was incredible. And then for my FYP, or first year project, it was important to me to do something entrepreneurial rather than working with a large company. Again, it was something that I always wanted to do, never really had the chance to do. And so I actually we worked on starting a dating app. So that was
Interesting.
very interesting.
Successful.
I mean, it is being continued. So, and that just goes back to how many potential you have here at growing here at Tech. So the person who had the idea is now starting that as a second year in the incubator program with our entrepreneurship center. And so, that just, the resources that the school gives us are just, impeccable.
Excellent. What about you, Deepak?
So I joined Rob for my GIX in Georgia and Armenia. So we were hosted by this T89 over there, a super senior person in the corporate industry over there. It was just wonderful to see a country which I think I would have never gone to in the normal due course of my life. For me, in addition to what Rob spoke about in terms of the tech sector, was the sheer access we had to everyone from politicians to central bankers to the media to entrepreneurs. In just a week's time, we could meet folks from a very broad range of industries and specializations. And that really gave us a sense of what it takes for a country to really unshackle itself from many years of being a post-Soviet economy to a more free market economy. So it was a great dipstick check for us to, again, all the concepts that we study in class. How capable are we to go and have a good conversation on those things with actual professionals? So that was a pretty amazing experience for me. My first year project, on the other hand, was again on energy, because that's my passion at Tuck as well. So we went and self-sourced a project on the future of electrical grids. Again, we found a couple of Tuckies who were very happy to work with us and helped us find that project. And they really guided us through it. And my whole group all of us had worked in energy before, but had very different backgrounds. So as much as we learned by doing that client project, I think I learned more from my classmates who were with me on that project, and doing that for a sustained period of time for like 2.5 months really helped us go deep in that subject and apply a lot of the learning that we got from our classes.
Go ahead.
So yeah, for me, I also did the Global Insights Expedition, but I went to Ghana in West Africa.
Oh, wow.
I was very interested in going to Africa before. I feel especially West Africa and Brazil have a lot of similarities, but also very critical differences. So I chose that because I felt that I could understand a little bit more about the country and the culture. And we visited a lot of companies, from startups to big telecom companies. Were hosted by some Dartmouth and Tuck alums. And it was just very interesting to see how the country is developing itself, especially in mobile pay. And Brazil is still, we still need to improve on that. So it was very good for my reflection, what I can bring back to my country. And before that, I actually went to Egypt. So I also fulfilled one of my long-lasting dreams to see the pyramids with a couple of people, from friends from Tuck. So it was amazing experience, not only to be there in West Africa, but also for me personally to visit Egypt before was very transforming. And for my first year project, I wanted to work with a project that, and especially a company that I knew that in South America would be very hard to find. So I worked with Burton Snowboards. And we were working on a problem on how they can actually expand their category of products that are not for winter sports. So coming from South America, I had a lot of opinions about that. And it was very interesting. It was a very a clear strategy project. And I used a lot of the things that we implemented for that project, like in terms of skills and frameworks. I also did a lot of that for my internship. So it was experiential learning, but also I feel like we learn a lot from our classmates, and then eventually you can apply all those skills in normal day-to-day jobs.
And to add to that, I think experiential learning doesn't stop at your first year. So I'm currently taking a class with the executive director of the Venture Capital Center. And it's basically, he's an industry expert. He works in Silicon Valley. He's a partner at a large venture capital firm. And he's preparing us for the venture capital investment competition. And so it's an independent study walking us through how to source deals in venture capital, how to evaluate entrepreneurs, and it's taking us from start to finish, kind of signing term sheets with those entrepreneurs. So that is one thing that I'm currently doing. And then in November, I'm actually going on a trip to China to learn more about digital companies there. And that is with the Center for Digital Strategies.
Nice. Well, actually, I'd love to follow up on that, because all of you mentioned sort of following your passion for the projects or doing something exciting with the centers. So can you tell people who are dialed in today more about what you do outside of classroom? Not to say that inside the classroom learning is not fun. It is. But what do you do that's not course related? It's mostly leadership positions, clubs, anything else?
Absolutely. I think a few things that I've enjoyed doing in my first year was I was a part of the organizing committee for Tuck Gives. So Tuck Gives is this huge auction that we run here at Tuck, where we kind of help sponsor some of the students who are looking at non-profit kinds of internships for the summer, and we create a pool through an auction through which we could augment the salaries that they earn by pursuing these non-traditional routes. The second thing I think I was involved with last year was the public speaking club. I think that's something that's always been a passion for me. I think I was involved with Toastmasters before business school, and that's something I've always looked at continuing. But I think the biggest thing that have enjoyed beyond all this has been tripod hockey. Again, I come from a country, India, where there is little ice. If anything, I don't think there's a single rink possibly in the whole country. And the first time I stepped on ice here, it was scary, right? But the fact that I could try something and embarrass myself in front of my friends was kind of reassuring. So now after a year of skating and playing hockey, I can skate forwards. I don't think I can stop. I don't think I can turn either, but where else in the world would I have tried ice hockey, right? So it's been fascinating, and one thing I'm looking forward to this year is to learn to ski as well. So
Yeah, so I did, as Deepak mentioned, I was also in tripod hockey, also coming from Brazil. My only ice skating experience was in a mall. And it was very fascinating to play, and not have ever played in a not remotely competitive scenario. So it was interesting. I was also doing that, and I feel like it's a very common thing at Tuck. Like, it builds a lot. You create a lot of friendships through hockey. Aside from that, so I'm admissions captain for Latin America, so talking to a lot of prospective students and helping them, sharing my experience about Tuck. That's why I'm happy to be here talking to a lot of people today. And also involved with the Latin American and Iberia Club, hosting some events and cultural. We're going to do some cultural stuff and more of also entrepreneurial and economical forums coming up next year. And I also did during my first year, I also was involved with community consulting. So that means that you can try consulting for a nonprofit in the Upper Valley, which is really good, that you also can give back to the community and also learn what is life as a consultant.
As Deepak mentioned, I'm also a big fan of tripod hockey. also can't skate, but that doesn't really matter. Currently, I'm injured, so can't really play, but still wanted to be part of the team. So taking more of a coaching role right now. Besides that, I'm involved with admissions as well. So I do interviews. Last year I did a lot of admissions lunches. I'm an admissions captain for Europe. I'm also the co-chair of the European Club and the Sailing Club here at Tuck. And then I'm involved with 2 centers. So I'm part of I'm a Revers Board Fellow with the Center for Business, Government, and Society. And so for this year, I'm on the board as a board observer at the Upper Valley Haven. Given my background in nonprofit, I really wanted to take on a more role of being a board member rather than in an operating role. The Upper Valley is, I think, an institution here that is very important to the Upper Valley, and Dartmouth and Tuck are very involved with it. It's a food pantry and homeless shelter. And besides that, I'm a fellow for the Center of Digital Strategies.
Nice. And Deepak does a lot of interviews for us too.
Yeah.
He's Tuck Admissions Associate. So those of you that have to yet interviewed or that will be invited potentially for a virtual interview, chances are you'll get Rob and Deepak. So you can talk about their experience playing hockey and everything else in between. But I think taking a step back a little bit and looking about thinking about the application process and what brought you to Tuck. So you highlighted many experiences that you've had in the classroom and extracurriculars, but what surprised you the most? Again, I assume all of you did a lot of research. I know at least 2 of you came to visit beforehand. What was the most surprising once you got here?
During our application or once we
once you got here.
So I think all of us mentioned community, and I believe everybody experienced it even during our application process of how willing people are able to talk about Tuck. And for me, it was often that when I was an applicant and I talked to an alumni, I was the person at the end saying, like, I think I have enough now after the person talked for 45 minutes. And so you'll see that everybody is very willing to help you, even though you're an applicant and not a Tucky at that point. But what actually surprised me was, even though coming in with a high expectation of how great the community is supposed to be, I got surprised on the upside, because it's one of these things everybody tells you, but you will only really experience it once you're here on campus, once you are a Tucky, because then, I got surprised on the upside, and I was actually that was a huge surprise to me, because everybody already tells you how great it is. That was one thing. And then another thing is working in the financial industry or an investment management industry. My boss has always told me an MBA is a degree, you will not learn a lot of new things. It's more a degree that will advance your career and 3 letters behind your name. And I think they couldn't have been more wrong. And so it's very rigorous. So you'll be very busy with your study group. It's a lot of, even though I have a business background, it surprised me a lot of how much new things I learned. And I personally wasn't as interested maybe in certain finance classes, but the good thing about all these electives here at Tuck is that you can choose your own path, and just choose the classes that you're interested in. Even in the finance classes where I thought I didn't have a huge interest, I learned a ton of new things just by the way that things are taught here at Tuck. So those are kind of the things that surprised me a lot.
Nice. What about you guys?
Yeah, so I think for me is community is something that we talk a lot about, but also the possibility to take on leadership roles in the community. So there's a lot of centers, a lot of clubs, and I feel like Tuck gives you the opportunity also to not only step in and lead clubs and apply for leadership positions, but also start something new. So if you have an idea and you want to get together with a bunch of classmates, and I feel like there will be someone interested in what you want to do, always. And I feel that it is very interesting on how people get together to help other people. So it didn't happen to me, but there was one classmate last year that he forgot his passport. And so that's a very interesting story. I think that's a very Tuck story. He forgot his passport, and he was already at the airport when he found out that he had no passport to fly. And he was an international student. And then he immediately texted the group and said, who could help me? So the airport from Hanover is 3 hours away. So it's not exactly close, not exactly a Uber right away. And immediately one of our classmates was like, I'm gonna grab your passport. So they had to go into his dorm, ask for security to go into this dorm because the dorm was locked, of course. And like, just imagine the hassle that she went through to get his passport, and then drove to Boston airport to give him his passport, and just because she was available. And I feel like that's more than a community. That's a sense of like help that you don't see anywhere. I've never seen that close in like the communities that I've belonged to before coming to Tuck. So I feel that that's what Tuck can do for you. And like the people that come here are very passionate about giving back. So I think that's what was really surprising for me.
And this is one of the many stories
Yeah.
of these types.
Pretty similar experience, I guess. I think both Julia and Rob have explained that really well. I think the one thing that really pleasantly surprised me was I think we all came in at a point after working for a few years, and we know how much of a rat race the corporate world tends to be. And I kind of thought I'd stop making real friends after a point. Everyone is just an acquaintance. But having come here, I can genuinely say that I've made real connections, real friends who've invested in me, invested in my story, invested in my experience. And that's been wonderful. The fact that people aren't in a hurry to catch the last subway, the last bus to go somewhere. People are willing to stick around, talk, and just get to know each other so much better. I think my highlight of every term is our small group dinners. It's a simple chance where somebody hosts 4 or 5 other classmates who may they not know too well. You just sit down and chat and just talk for 3-4 hours, and the things you get to learn about people is just fascinating. Given how fast-paced the world tends to be, I really value this chance to get to know people at that deeper level, whereas I find the corporate world to be a little too superficial and in many ways. So I think that's one thing that's going to stick with me for a very long time.
Yeah, and Julia, I'll switch gears a little bit, but you mentioned the airport being 3 hours away. In Deepak, you alluded to us being more secluded. Rob, I think you said something about the middle of nowhere. So I'm going somewhere with this. The question that I get a lot on the road from both international candidates and domestic is about recruiting and how does that work, and our location being sort of a little bit more off the beaten path, and we're not in the middle of larger cities, and whether that actually impacts the recruiting process negatively. Having worked in career services, for me, it's a firm no. I think it's the opposite. Location actually works, I think, to our advantage. But I'd love to hear more from you about your recruiting experience, whether you felt that you had limited opportunities due to our location or anything else that stood out to you, and how you went about it.
Yeah, I can start with that. The short answer is no, not at all. As you mentioned, I think the location is more a strength rather than a weakness. So as an example, you'll have a lot of executives that come here rather than just spending 1 or 2 hours on a talk here. They most of the time spend the night, have dinner with students before, have breakfast or lunch with them the day after. And so you really can interact with executives that you couldn't in a large city, because they would just come and then be gone again. That's one. For the recruiting part, I had no problems whatsoever. All the consulting firms came here. I recruited for Germany, and so all the firms that I recruited for came either here, or I met with them in Boston for lunches or dinners. So that's actually pretty unusual that, companies that are in Germany come all the way to Hanover. But McKinsey, for example, offered to send a German to Hanover just to meet with me for a coffee chat. I think that just tells you how much, TAC a brand is, but also just how willing recruiters are willing to come here, recruit foreigners here. So in my perspective, you will have no problem whatsoever. And as I said, I think it's more a strength rather than a weakness.
Yeah, similarly to Rob. So I did my recruiting, especially because I recruited for consulting. It didn't happen on campus, so I had to travel for my interviews because they flew Brazilian partners to New York, Boston, or Philadelphia. And I feel like even though I had to travel and I had to like go 3 hours to the airport, catch a plane, and go to wherever I needed to go, one, Tuck was really understanding and supportive if I needed to do that. It was fairly okay that I had to miss a couple of classes. My professor, I told them in advance and I did the pre-work before. So if that happens to you, I feel like Tuck will do a really good job of understanding your situation. So that was something that I experienced. I had no problem. I also shifted a couple of dates of my interviews because they were like on the same day of like maybe classes that I needed to present something or that I had a big commitment on campus. So I didn't feel like if you need to recruit off campus that will harm you. And I feel like Tuck is very supportive. But then again, there's a lot of companies that recruit on campus, a lot of resources, as Rob said, and they are really genuinely interested in interviewing when they come here. So they want to get to know you. It's just not a transaction for them. Like it's also like an experience coming here to interview people. They know how much of a special place Tuck is. So also like had no problem at all. I don't know, what about you, Deepak?
Again, I think both Rob and Julia have summarized the on-campus process pretty well. The traditional banking, consulting, leadership programs, very much on campus. There are companies that are here all the time, and it's a very clearly laid out path. Talking about off-campus, I guess that's a slightly different ball game. But the reality is, let's say the big tech firms, everyone is slowly shifting towards virtual interviews. So being in a location isn't any longer a benefit as it used to be. A lot of companies prefer to do virtual interviews these days, virtual sessions. They feel there's more value in them connecting virtually rather than being on campus. So in that sense, both on campus and off campus, I think Tuck is pretty well positioned in terms of how our students recruit for both, and we've done pretty well in both senses.
And to add to that, it's not only the smaller companies or the tech companies that now shift to virtual interviews. My employer Bain, they asked me if it's fine with me that I do the second round with them through WebEx or Skype or whatever. So I mean, we're in the 21st century where you can just make use of modern day technology, and I mean it's not a problem at all.
Yeah, and what I think is of not benefit, but what is our strength too is our career services office. So they work very closely with the companies. They are both the coaches are student facing and company facing. So people who cover healthcare really work closely with the companies, but they are also the same people or the same coaches who work closely with the students. So especially with an eye towards international students, they know exactly which are the companies out there that are willing to sponsor international students, which are having a much more difficult time with it. So the positions, as you will see them listed on our recruiting platform, you are able to filter them by the work authorization requirement from the company. So it's a very transparent process. And of course, recruiting is difficult and it's sort of nerve-wracking when you're interviewing, when you're applying, you all went through it. There's a lot that goes into it, but the school is small enough to be nimble with the changes that need to be made to react more or be more proactive to the market demands, but also the career coaches and the employment prospects. And so speaking of that, the question that we also get a lot is about the H-1B visa and the lottery and how it works. And it's, as much as we'd love to say how well our students do in it, we don't really have a say in the lottery. It really indeed is a lottery. And it's the other schools are in the same boat or a very similar position as us. As I think what Tuck does really well, they position you for success by working with companies that sponsor international students and getting you the offers and getting you those offers early. But then from there on, it's completely out of the hands of the school administration and everyone else because it's a lottery that every other international student has to go through, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lottery and can't really do anything. But to add to the career development office, I think one thing that Tuck does well is going with where MBA students are going. So a larger portion of our class is now actually moving into tech roles at large companies or small companies in the Silicon Valley. So the CDO just hired a person that is dedicated sitting in the Silicon Valley who is an industry expert, having worked in technology for a long time, helping students out who are interested in, tech roles. And I think, that just goes back, we are in a small town, so there's not a gigantic, unicorn industry here in the Upper Valley, but they do make sure to have people on the ground in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Just curious, as you went through your own recruiting process or hearing from classmates, what role did the Tuck Alumni Network play in it?
I can maybe speak to that. It's almost crazy how responsive people tend to be. Every single person I've ever reached out to, either through LinkedIn or through the Tuck Networking Hub, people have just been responsive within a day or maximum 36 hours. And they're always willing to speak to you. They're willing to get on a call. They're willing to put you in touch with other people. And the willingness to just be open, to be available as a resource and help you through this process, I found that to be super reassuring. And they were constantly reassuring by telling us that we've been there, it's hard, but at the same time, you can always rely on the network at every stage. Even this summer at McKinsey, I had a buddy assigned to me who was a Tuckie, so who knew pretty much what I was going through, my background, and it was just helpful to see how they were kind of looking out for me, and which is not something I saw that my other the other interns enjoyed. So it's this ever-present network that's always there to fall back on. At the same time, it's something that's really giving you the opportunities that are otherwise pretty hard to come by.
And Deepak, you mentioned the Tuck Networking Hub.
Yep.
Can you tell us more about it?
Oh, absolutely. So this is a relatively new initiative that the school has set up. Through this, it's kind of, so we've always been good at using our alumni network, but this new hub is really structured that process. So alumni can sign up for different ways in which they can help people. They can either give career advice or do mock interviews or just talk people through their own careers. And they all sign up for a particular amount of time on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. And students and alumni can literally just go back into that and sign up for those slots. So this has just made the relatively unstructured networking process into a very structured one. And that's something that I hear great things from my fellow classmates as well now. So pretty excited to use it more. I'll be candid, I've not used it as much as I should be, but I'm really looking forward to leveraging it more in the coming days.
Not to put you on a spot, Julia, have you had any interactions, or let's assume you've had many interactions with Tuck alums. Any that stand out to you the most? Did you have any touch points during your internship, afterwards?
Yeah, so prior to Tuck, as soon as I got admitted, I got a lot of alumni reaching out. So that was my first contact with like alumni from any school, like the undergrad that I went to Brazil. That wasn't like the kind of thing that they did. Like there were no alumni reaching out to you. So it was the first shock that I was like, wow, just because I got into this school, people are already like wanting to wish me like a happy MBA or like talk about their experience at Tuck. And it wasn't necessarily to convince me to go into that school. They just wanted to be interested in like on what was going on through my mind, because, I just got accepted to business school and it was a big deal coming from Brazil. And so that was my first impression. And then during my first year at Tuck, not only for recruiting, but also when I got involved as being admissions captain for Latin America, I got access to a lot of alumni from my own country, and they are now actively helping us and build a Brazilian association, Tuck Association, back home. So, and we are talking like every month. I talk to some of them, so it has been a very positive experience that I get to talk to very senior people, and just because we share that we did an MBA in this amazing place. So I felt that was really transforming. And some of them, when they come here, so they host dinners. We also made a barbecue for one of them that came here. He's a Brazilian alumni that works, has his own company in Texas. So it was interesting because the moment that he arrived on campus, it was like, I want to meet all of the Brazilian current students. And I just felt like, when in my life would people have the interest of just getting to know me and wanting to know about me in such a very deep way. So I wouldn't say that I had one recollection, but several. Yeah. And they all been very positive. And I feel like if I need anything down the road, personal or professional, I know I can count not only with my fellow classmates, but also the network that I'm building, like especially with alums that I've been meeting across my first year and now second year here at Tuck.
Nice. Well, I feel like we've covered so much ground here, and I've been asking many, many questions, but I know that you have been reaching out with questions to ask too. So we'll probably move on with those again, just because they're all great, and would like to get through a bunch of them. I'd love to start with the one somebody asked, what made you leave your jobs and pursue an MBA? I think this is such a timely question at this point, both for students in the US, but also around the globe that are considering it. So think back years ago when you made that decision to quit your jobs and take up loans and move across the world to come here. Anyone?
Sure, I can start off. So for me, as I mentioned earlier, my bosses in the investment management industry always told me an MBA is just a degree where you get 3 letters behind your name. And then I moved into nonprofit, and as I started working there, I realized that all my life I was just, geared towards working in the finance industry. So in undergrad, I didn't take any classes how to operate or grow a business. And so that's when I decided and looked more for MBA programs that, teach me the general management skill set that I think I need in order to be a successful business person. And so that's when I decided that an MBA degree is certainly not just a degree or 3 letters behind your name, but rather something that can enhance your career.
So yeah, for me, I felt like after 7 years working for the same company in the same industry, I felt that I wanted to transition my career into something that I could learn more about different industries and work with different people and in more diverse teams. So I felt the need of actually complementing my business acumen with an MBA degree. But not only that, I feel like that's the professional side of the story. But I felt like growing up in Brazil, and I know a lot of you that are participating in the webinar probably never left your home countries to probably live abroad. So I had never had that experience, and I thought I knew that I needed to have a degree or maybe improve my business acumen throughout an MBA. But what a lot of people ask me, why did you quit your job? You worked for Coca-Cola, one of the most successful companies in the world. My mom went crazy when I told her that I would leave, and I knew that what I was stepping into was a place that I could not only learn what I needed to learn in order to transition my career, but also be in a place where there are people that come from all types of different backgrounds and a very international community, which I wouldn't have back home. So the kind of a different point of view, different view of the world, you only get that if you are in a place that provides you the setting and the people that also want to share their experiences. And I feel like you learn more being in that kind of environment. So that's why I chose Tuck, because it's a small school, but everyone is willing to help you out. And that's one of the main reasons why I never thought and regretted my decision for 1 second to come here and live this. So it's worth every investment of time, energy, and even though I miss a lot of my friends and family back home, it has changed me, and it's the most transformative thing that I've done so far.
And to piggyback on that, because you mentioned the international community, I assume we have more international students than one from Germany, one from Brazil, and one from India.
Yes.
So this leads well into the next question. Can you tell us about the international community at Tuck, what that means to you, and what how you came to experience it over the last over a year at this point?
Oh, yeah. I think a big goal for me to come to business school, as I'd never lived outside my home country before this, was to understand different cultures, and how business and culture kind of work hand in hand. To your question, Valeria, I think though the international community is a big part of the school, I think given how small the school is, there's just one Tuck community per se. It's nice to have the international community to fall back on, and we share a common bond of having left our lives per se before Tuck and having come all this way. At the same time, I feel the whole school is on this journey of developing a more global mindset and becoming better at becoming global leaders for the future in some ways. and one standout for me has been the way we host our culture chats. So every single Tuesday lunch from 12 to 1, there's a global culture chat. There's one country, one region, a bunch of folks just go on stage and just talk about their country, their experience, and how that's helping them in the US, and also what the other US students can learn from them as well. And that's a very powerful way in which I've gotten to know about so many different countries in just a year that I had pretty much no idea about. So it's a nice group that that we're all very close to. At the same time, I think the bigger school itself is just one big tuck, I guess.
Nice. And sort of you mentioned sharing your experience, your culture with others. One in sort of many of the admissions events that we hold around the US, almost every time an alum mentions a fun track. And I'm amazed because, again, being in the US, you think of those international students leading those tracks to their home countries or hometowns to share more of their culture, but I never thought it from the international students' point of view, because quite often, like, I know that one of the TAs or TUC admissions associates is leading or led a track to Mississippi last year. So you get to experience, because again, for many of you, US is the new culture. This is the international place that you're at. So you get to explore the United States much more too, which is great.
Yeah, I feel like I can add to that. So I think me and Rob, we were both involved in a track that we went to Austin in Texas. That was led by a fellow classmate of ours that is from Texas and wanted to show Texas. So there was a big football, college football game. So it was very interesting to also do American tracks. And also, I think from the international perspective, so I'm taking a group of people from TUC to back home to Brazil now in December. So it's also an opportunity for us to show people the country from our own eyes and our perspective. So, and I feel like TUC gives you just a chance to just like invite people and like, and everyone is interested, right? Because you come from a different place and they want to get to know the country with you. So like people are very excited. And I also get excited that like I get this amazing opportunity to show my classmates where I'm from. So I feel like it's very special in that way.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Because you're all in consulting with three different firms, and we do have many students that choose to pursue other industries. I love the question about you talking about your friends who are international students and did not go into consulting. Again, because we're so close, I assume you've had many conversations with them. So any anecdotes to share or sort of general experience?
Yeah, sure, I can kick that off. So my roommate is actually someone who didn't pursue the consulting career track. So he's actually going to work for a large private equity firm in New York. So for him, I know the TUC alumni network has been just as helpful. He's originally from Colombia, worked in banking before and in a corporate development role, and so now is going to private equity. Another classmate, also international, he's from Scotland. He spent the summer working in venture capital in New York at a smaller venture capital firm. And there are a lot of international students, probably the majority, who didn't pursue the consulting career track. So this is just, statistics here show you different, but there are a lot who went to, tech roles in either in the Pacific Northwest or on, around Silicon Valley. So yeah, there are tons of roles.
And to kind of add to that, and again, this is not the representation of the paths that international students have taken at TUC, and a big drive is there also, in addition to tech and other industries. I think a lot of leadership programs are looking at international students because a lot of US firms are expanding their workforce. Everyone has a huge business back in Asia or in Latin America, and they need future leaders who have the US education, who can go back and lead those businesses for them. A very good friend of mine from Asia worked at one such firm, and they've already charted out a long-term career path for her, where one day she might go back to her home country in Asia and might lead the country's business at some point. So again, it's a wide range of opportunities that are available to people, and it's up to each of us to decide what our right both short and long-term career path is.
Yeah. I would just add to that a lot of people and a lot of our colleagues were looking for opportunities in the U.S. There are also a lot of opportunities abroad. And just because I feel like even though you're doing an MBA in an American school, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be connected with firms from other places in the world. So often at Tuck, people will be hiring for positions in China, positions in Europe, positions in Latin America, and not only international firms. So like Uber, for example, the head of Uber in South America is a former Tucky. And he comes to Tuck every year just to host opportunities in Latin America. And that's just to give an example, and other companies do the same thing. We also have student and also career tracks that go to other places in the world. So even if you're not interested in the US, like my case, I went back to Brazil for my internship, there are lots of opportunities abroad. And not only with the Tuck Alumni Network, but also our career services and throughout our clubs. You can also arrange tracks to visit companies abroad. So you can look more broadly in the sense of where do you want to be after you graduate from Tuck.
And so a plug here for our employment report. If you haven't had a chance to look at it already, just Google Tuck Employment Report and you'll see where our graduates go to for full-time positions and internships, including the locations. And there's a separate section just for international students, just to see what the hiring trends and where the international candidates went to work after Tuck. But I would love to follow up on something that, Rob, you mentioned. You briefly said, my roommate. And so a question that I get a lot from international candidates too, what is the living situation? Like, does everyone have a roommate? Is it a dorm off campus? So can you share more about what the sort of housing situation is for first years and then for you as a second year too?
Yeah, sure. So I lived on campus, so I came here by myself. And so I thought living on campus is a great opportunity to get to know as many classmates right away as possible.
Is in a dorm?
Awesome. In a dorm. It's not your classic, college dorm room. It's, you live by yourself, you have your own bathroom, you have a community kitchen. Those are really nice dorm rooms. I really enjoyed it because you were together with your classmates 24/7 and you got to know them really, really well. And so I thought, besides that, Tuck is all connected through a tunnel. So when it gets a little colder during the winter, which can certainly happen, there's the advantage of just walking, through the tunnels to class in your slippers. So took full advantage of that. And second years then live off campus. I think that's, by that time that the people that you get along really well with. So I live with 3 of my other classmates in the traditionally South American house.
We're happy to have her.
Yeah. And so I was kind of the adopted South American in that case. So I live with an Argentinian and Colombian and actually an American. So
you mentioned off campus. How off campus is off campus?
It's for me with a car. It's 5 minutes away. Some people live directly in the city. They can walk to class. I chose to. I really wanted to live in that house because it's one of the nicest houses, if not the nicest house at Tuck. So really was happy to take the 5 minutes car drive to off campus, and we'll host a lot. We host a lot of South American barbecues at our house. So.
I love how you describe Hanover, this city.
City of Hanover.
What about you, Deepak? Are you off campus too?
Yes, pretty similar story to Rob. Lived on campus in the first year, loved it. I'd wake up 5 minutes before class and run down for my 8:30 class back in the first year. Second year has been equally nice because, again, you go back to living like an adult. You have, it's great to host people, call people home. Again, that's been something we've been doing every single week this term. Me and my other flatmates, we made a ritual of cooking good Indian food for a few other classmates whom we do not know well. The whole point is to call people we do not know personally and get to know them in a more intimate setting much better. And I think these are the conversations that I think are going to stick with me for the very long run. And again, I don't think we brought this up, but this is a ridiculously beautiful part of the world, right? I think taking advantage of this place by living off campus is something I enjoy doing. There's literally a mountain in my backyard. There are hikes around the house. The Connecticut River is a 2-minute walk from my place. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place to spend a couple of years as well. So
Excellent. Well, I think we have 5 minutes left, so I'd love to close out just asking you about your second year so far, because you're very experienced students at this point. I assume first year feels like it's been forever ago. So how has your second year been going now that you're, 2 months in, almost 3 at this point?
Yeah, thanks for reminding us that our time is almost over.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
My experience in the second year so far has been phenomenal. I mean, the first year is, it can be very stressful. You want to get a job, you get to know a lot of new people. Academics are tough. Second year, academics are tough as well. But, for me personally, I signed my letter of employment. So for me, it's now a little bit more relaxed. However, you want to take full advantage of all the great experiences that Tuck can have. So I'm trying to take any international trip that I can just take. So I'm going to, as I say, I'm going to China. After that, I'm going to Thailand and New Zealand. So I think, second year is really focusing on a lot of traveling. I'm going to go to India for a classmate's wedding in March. So I'm really excited for that. My recommendation would be just, once a week, sit down and try to reflect on what you're doing here. How do you want to, get the most out of your experience at Tuck? And if you decide to go to Tuck, do that the summer prior to. What do you want to get out of this experience? Because life here is so fast paced that, all of us basically just came here and now we're almost, it's hard to say, but we're almost gone again because time just flies by during an MBA. So really think about what do you want to get out of this experience, write it down, and then try to do weekly reflections on, how your experience is going, and just stay true to yourself.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going down like a similar path as Rob, like trying to experience different things that I didn't do last year because probably I was more stressed about recruiting or like everything was so new and you get so overwhelmed. So I feel like coming into the second year, you already know the things that you like and that you don't like and the things that you didn't have the experience to experience on your first year. So that's what I'm trying to do. Learn new sports, hiking, enjoying this beautiful place like Deepak was mentioning, just getting to know people that you haven't met before. So I'm actually together with other 2 classmates. We have a club called Hanover Eating Club. And we host dinners every month with people that we don't know and we really want to get to know. Because as Valeria said, like time is flying by and in a couple of months we'll be graduating. So there are some classmates that I still don't know and I really want to get to know them and just enjoying my time, not only like focusing on the electives that I really want to understand and like help to also add more skills, the things that I've already learned. And I feel like preparing myself to go back to the real world and doing it in a very like friendly and open space that I feel like Tuck provides.
Yeah, again, totally agree with what Rob and Julia mentioned. The one thing that I'm trying to do this year is to give back to the school. I think you feel like you're part of the institution here and less of a customer institution. And in every possible way, I think all of us are trying to get to know our T21s better. We're all mentoring the next class for recruiting, for career, for in every possible way in which we can give back to the school, and that's why we're doing admissions interviews to help build the next Tuck class as well. I think that's something that I've seen every single classmate of mine truly want to do and truly try to give back to the school in any way in which we can, because that's something that's going to stick with us for the long term. And I think when we look back at our time at Tuck, I think we'll all be looking at it fondly in terms of what legacy we've left back at the school. I think that's something, and going back to what Rob mentioned, do take that moment to take a step back and ask yourself, what do I want my legacy at Tuck to be? It's a hard question, but coming here with that sense of clarity really helps shape your time at the school.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much to Deepak and Julia and Rob for sharing your experience with us. As we're now wrapping up and saying goodbyes and thank you, check us out online. All All three of you are Tuck Admissions Ambassadors too. So if you just look up Tuck Admissions Ambassadors, you'll see a group of amazing students who all volunteered to be there because they want to talk to prospective students. So you can filter by industry, function, geography, really whatever your preference. So reach out to us, stay connected. That community that we were mentioning today throughout, that really is near and dear to our hearts. So whatever we can do to make the process easier for you and facilitate your learning about Tuck, we are here for it. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
listening.
Good luck.
Bye.